Well, I'm sure by the end of this press conference, the NCAA will change the rules and we'll have another calendar. I think the portal may actually open up tomorrow or something, so we got to be ready for that. It is unique, right? We had SEC head coaches meetings last week, and the one thing we said is, like, can we just have the back-to-back the same calendars? And people say, well, is that for the better? We don't know. Literally, right, this is going to year, 7 of me being a head coach. We've never had the exact same calendar. And so people say, well, what did you think about? Well, we haven't had a chance to get for 365 days in a row that are the same. So our hope is that maybe it just stays like this, and then we can go back and say, okay, what are the advantages? People forget about, what about the academic calendar? We haven't seen the repercussions of what that looks like, right? What does it look like with spring? We all have all of these ideas, right? We could talk for hours upon hours about, hey, how would you change this and how would you change that? But I do think it's nice to kind of, okay, here's our team, right? And as far as we know, right, the additions we're bringing in this summer, and then that's it. So there's not having to worry, right? That when that spring portal window goes, you always worry about who's going to leave, we can maybe just focus on the betterment of our entire program.
Coach, first day first full day, I guess, you split those 4 kids in Arkansas, and that really kind of got everyone's attention. Can you share what you can about that? I don't know if there's some stuff you don't want to talk about that. But.
No problem. Yeah, I think it's important. Let's talk about just in generalities of Arkansas recruiting. So we signed 19 kids, all right, high school kids. 10 of them are from the state of Arkansas. Let me say that again. 10 of the 19 are from the state of Arkansas. So, like, I think that proves a point that how important this state is to us and what we're trying to get accomplished here. And I spoke at the High School Coach Association, the Arkansas High School Coach Association, a couple weeks ago, and I shared that stat with them, and a lot of them were like, oh, we had no idea. You know, because they all want their kids recruited. They all think, and I said, I don't even know on paper if the recruiting sites would even say there was 10 Division I kids in the state. But that's how important it is to us. We even tried to get some kids, you know, in the portal that are from here, and they never even made the visit here. So I encouraged them. I said, let's keep the kids in state here. If they're thinking about transferring, let's bring them back home if it makes sense for both parties, if it's ultimately the right fit. But those kids that had flipped and decided to stay here and be Razorbacks and play for the in-state team, a lot of those were previous relationships. Some of these kids, you know, I know Quincy Rhodes, that the school put out a thing about our relationship, and it showed a picture of us from, 6 years ago. I had no facial hair, and Quincy weighed about 200 pounds. But those relationships, right, sometimes those are important because those are kids that you believe in, they know you, and they say, man, you haven't changed. You're still that same dude that preaches the same thing, that teaches the kids and tries to play winning football. And the TJ Hodges I remember going to see him at school, and he wasn't even there. And then I ended up running into him at another camp and just saying, hey, don't ever forget about me, and some of these other kids. So I think those relationships with Danny Beals, right, Kennedy, who was on our campus and said, Coach, I'm really not interested in playing for you at my previous spot. And just keeping those relationships alive, because you never know. Because back then, maybe they would transfer back to Memphis. But I think just being transparent with these kids and showing them what we're all about and kind of building those relationships has allowed us, and that hopefully that will continue to allow us to keep some of these great kids in state.
Another kid from Arkansas, kind of different direction, but Terrence Robertson came from OPU, from Warren. Everybody thinks of wide receivers down at Warren, but Terrence, a big offensive lineman. I know you haven't practiced, but what have you seen from him, and what's your expectations kind of for him?
First off, Warren has been a great pipeline. We're going to continue to bring those guys. In fact, I got to run into old Jarius Wright. People forget I was with him with the Vikings, so it's kind of cool to run into him. He's gotten into the coaching profession. I'm trying to tell him not to get too far down that rabbit hole of coaching, but what it can lead to. But speaking of that, Terrence has been great. I think he's a guy that came in and came from a program that had some success, but just teaching him, hey, this is what it looks like to work at a Division I level. This is what it looks like to work at the SEC level, and we're going to work even harder here at Arkansas. And so Terrence has been great. He's took the bull by the horns and has had a great approach to it. We know how athletic he is. We know he's very raw on some things. And listen, the previous stop did a great job with him, but it's our job to refine some of that stuff, to get his body right in the weight room, to understand what it's going to look like to work the way we work. But he's been great. He's had the right attitude, and we're excited he's here.
Sorry, I got one last question. Just real quick. Do you foresee signing anyone else in the 26th class? High school?
Yeah, I think as far as that goes, you can never say never. I believe we're probably done there. We may add some walk-ons. I think the NCAA still has the rules of the 105, and then what do DSAs look like, and we got to continue to look at the number, what that looks like as we massage the roster. But I don't foresee any other signings at this point right now, but obviously things can change.
Ryan, there's some social media, the team aspect here of off-season workouts. What's the thought behind that, or the captains, and how it's all divvied up, what you're looking for there?
Yeah, it's something we kind of bought with us that I implemented a couple years ago, and it was really once the transfer portal came out, and we've kind of deemed it our own thing here. We've called it War on the Hill, and it's kind of what we did, and it's got different aspects of it. But the morning workout session that you guys are seeing all the social media blurb on it, we call it Tour of Duty, okay? And what we did is we took really 8 players. I kind of just chose 8 guys that have shown some leadership, guys that maybe mostly guys that are returning, guys that we thought had some leadership qualities, and we chose them. I put 2 per team, okay? And we call them captains of the team. And I said, all right, choose your names. So like one team came up with the Hog Warriors. Cool, that's your name. So we came up with a cool logo for them, and they got their own. They think it's the neatest thing in the world, right? Another one's the Hog Team 6. Another's whatever. They all got their own unique names, right? Watch Greatness is another team name. And so the captains came up with their name. Then what I did was I separated our coaching staff. So I took a offensive line coach and a defensive back coach. I said, you guys have Hog Team 6. I got a running back coach and a linebacker coach. I said, you guys got Watch Greatness as your team. So I mixed the coaches up. Okay, so then what we did is then we had a draft, true NFL draft, old school snake draft where, team 1 picks, all right, and then the 6 team picks, and that 6th team that picks then picks the 7th, and they got to draft their own players. We had it where the players were in the lounge. We did the team room. It was a great event. And it told me one thing. You also got to see what the players thought of each other, right? Just in the short time, workouts, leadership, all those things. So then they all drafted their teams, and each team says roughly 16 players, right? Some coaches here or there. So now they got their team. Well, Ryan, what the hell does that mean? So then in these morning workouts, okay, we had one this morning, they compete versus each other. And so now they're doing these morning conditioning drills, but everything is a competition. It's me versus that guy on the other team. And we're constantly doing things, whether we're flipping tires, racing through cones, doing all those different things. Everything is graded and rewarded. So the guys are working their tails off, but they're competing and having fun with it. So it's different than the old school, hey, let's just get on the line and run gassers. There's some similar thought to that, but now everything's a competition. And they get rewarded for points with that. And then you say, okay, well, that's cool, but what else do you do? So like today we had a tug of war at the end of the day. Let those guys pull the rope, compete that way. We also implement different things. If they do community service, they get more points. I'm pretty proud to announce that last week, right, for the VA hospital, we delivered more cans than they've ever had delivered in a single day, over 1,200 cans delivered by the football program. Like, man, I'm proud of that. But guess what? The guys are also like, we got points for our team. So it's a win-win for everybody. No different. If a kid is late for study hall, that team gets docked points. A kid misses class, they get docked even more points. We found a kid that parked in the wrong parking spot. I showed it to the whole team. I said, this team's going to lose 15 points. So we're not putting up with that stuff. A guy misses a meal. Right? So now all of a sudden you've created this camaraderie for the freshman defensive back now is hanging out with the senior offensive lineman that's from Little Rock, and they're spending all this time together. And, hey, make sure you're going to class. Yeah, hey, let's go to this community service. Hey, let's go have lunch together. Now you're building that bond because we have so many new faces. You got coaches learning each other. Oh, and by the way, they're working their tails off for the betterment of our program. It's been so much fun because we're going to continue to do this thing throughout spring, and we tie it in with other drills. And everybody says, cool, what's the reward? Man, they just love to compete. And so that's what's so enjoyable is kind of watching that as we work. So that's kind of what you guys are seeing on social media, this War on the Hill time with what we're calling this current part of tour of duty.
Anything or anyone that stands out?
Man, it's amazing how much like the racing through the drills is how competitive. And when I say in general, like how much they want to win and how much they want to have success. And you get to see the different movement things, and you get to see the guys get on each other about body language. Hey, man, get your hands off your hips. We don't want to get docked. So that's the whole thing. I don't say one individual is sticking out, but what you did get to see is, day one, there's some disciplined guys, right? Guys that weren't seeing the key of the ball to get off and were jumping off sides. You were seeing guys not learning how to finish. Like, oh, there's the line. I got to finish. They were finishing at the line instead of through it. And then every single time we get to implement it, if the line's there for them to finish, now they're almost hitting the back wall of the indoor, Or if a guy starts to pretend like he's stretching, a guy goes, nah, stop that BS. Let's have better body language. So that's what's been so great to me is that's when people talk about culture, like the guys are starting to hold each other accountable, and that's been fun.
Kurt Signetti, Indiana, just won a national championship, a program not so dissimilar from this program. As a coach at this program, do you look at it? Is there things that you can look at Indiana and say, man, we could do that. We're not doing that. Maybe we should do that.
Yeah, listen, credit to obviously Coach Signetti and obviously Indiana and what he did. It's remarkable. Let's call it what it is. I will say this because everybody has asked me that. 135 other coaches are trying to do exactly what they're doing. I don't care if you're saying, well, they were similar to what we are. Notre Dame's trying to do exactly what Indiana did. Oregon, all the resources, right? Everybody's trying to do exactly what Indiana did. We all are. Hawaii, and so, but you learn from it, right? Like obviously they had some experience. He's a fantastic coach, and they hit on the right guys. He did a phenomenal job of earmarking the right guys. So I give them all the credit. We all, yes, right? Like we hope that on all these high school kids, we batted 1,000. We hope on all these transfers, we really hit. We hope in this quarterback competition that we got a dude. And so there's things you model, you look at, you try to learn from every program. I mean, right? Maybe it's stealing a play from them, right? Maybe it's looking at something they've done in the off season. And I'd say this, every college program is constantly doing the same. Like, hey, is there something we can learn from what Wyoming was doing? And so that's part of it. But, yeah, we're going to constantly try to elevate ourselves. But someone said, hey, does that put more pressure on you? Nah, that's just the nature of it. I'm glad to see that it shows that everybody's capable of going out there and competing at the highest level.